Hey everybody, Brad here again for the first time in a while. I had to reset everything up, so if I'm eating the mic, I'm sorry. Trying out this video log thing yet again. Feels like it's been probably a year or so since the last one, but anyway. Why am I talking to myself on my motorcycle right now? Today's vlog comes from a book that I finished a little while back by a guy named Kyle Carpenter, the youngest living Medal of Honor recipients from the Marines. He jumped on a grenade and somehow survived, saved one of his best friends, and has a pretty incredible story. The book's called You Are Worth It. I highly recommend it. The idea that I'm going to talk about in this video from that book, in a single word, is scars. Of course, since Kyle jumped on the grenade, he got messed up pretty bad physically and has a lot of visible scars, although I would say that the surgeons did a pretty good job putting him back together, all things considered. And he looks pretty damn good. But he's still got scars that'll never go away. So while I don't have too many visible physical scars, I thought this could also kind of relate to emotional scars as well. So what I figured I would do is tell a couple of stories that resulted in emotional scars for me. Not super in depth, because I don't think that would be a good idea to do while riding a motorcycle, but I'm going to try to at least get the surface level and relate to that idea about scars that Kyle mentions, which I'll kind of wrap up the conclusion with what that is. So, two of the biggest emotionally scarring events for me were from two separate deployments. I'll start with the second worst and then do the first worst, kind of as a little warm-up to get talking and keep moving with talking so I don't get hung up on it. But the second worst was a deployment in 2008 to Afghanistan. It was a valley called Tangi Valley out near Forward Operating Base Airborne. We got a call for a convoy that got hit by an IED, and they wanted us to go do post-blast analysis, try and figure out, kind of like the battlefield forensics, if you will, of what happened, so we can try and catch the bad guys and keep them from doing it again. When we got out there, it was a 3-vehicle convoy. It was what was called ETTs, Embedded Training Teams. So it was mostly Afghan Army and a handful of Americans there to train them up and show them how to do infantry tactics and all that good stuff. The lead vehicle got hit by a pretty big, nasty IED, which of course stopped the convoy. And then the rear vehicle also got hit by another really big, nasty IED. And these were armored Humvees, so they didn't do too well against the IEDs that we were seeing there in that area of operations. The one that we showed up on, the middle vehicle, this kind of plays into the story too. The middle vehicle saw the first vehicle get demolished, and then the third vehicle get demolished, and they basically did a 3-point turn or something and left because they knew everybody was killed instantly in both vehicles. So they targeted the American vehicles, the Humvees, and not the Afghans on this one, which was not always the case, because the Afghans typically rolled in unarmored Ford Rangers, which would just get absolutely destroyed. But in this instance, they targeted the U.S. guys that were with them. So we get out there on the scene, and it was a pretty bad scene. Not really sure. There's human remains still on the scene, and you could see blood trails from where the Taliban had drug off the bodies they could remove from the Humvee for propaganda purposes. There was, I don't know what it exactly was, but there were some internal organs from members who were killed strewn about, as well as bloody, tattered uniforms and all of their gear and their weapons. The vehicle had been on fire for so long that their weapons had essentially fused together in the shape of an M4, but it was all just melted metal on the inside. And on top of their truck they had Mark 19, which is a 40mm rifle grenade machine gun, and the ammunition for that's pretty dangerous, very sensitive, also all been on fire. So we showed up, there was still burning wreckage, which we immediately put out after we cleared our way down. And we went about clearing the scene. The gunner was still trapped in the vehicle. He was burned up pretty bad. Could hardly tell it was a human being. But the Taliban couldn't get him out, so that's why he was still in there. We managed to recover him, at least. And I know the other guys who had been removed from the vehicle were recovered later on that evening, but because there was quite a heavy force came in that night to recover those guys, and also a little bit of payback. So that's all we heard all night, was that valley getting bombed to hell. After we eventually finished up the op and went back to Forward Operating Base Airborne. But yeah, that one was pretty emotionally scarring even to this day. You know, just thinking about it makes me pretty angry. It made me pretty angry for quite a while. There's still some details I don't care to share all the way. I remember doing that one time with a friend of mine who's a civilian girlfriend when I got back from that deployment. I think I overshared a little bit too much details based on the look of on her face, so I've kind of stopped sharing for the longest time any of that. So I'm trying to figure out how to do it right with the filter without being too grotesque and, you know, the gory details that aren't really necessary. But that's been a post-blast that's stuck with me for a while, and I've done a lot of them. An unfortunately high number of fellow Americans killed remain still on the scene, but that one was the worst by far, and definitely still sticks with me today. The other incident that definitely caused some emotional scars was the deployment prior, actually, in Baghdad in 2006 to early 2007, when Tim Weiner, Dan Miller, and Liz Lonke were all killed by the vehicle-borne IED that they had responded to. That's a tough one to talk about for sure. And yeah, that was something, like they talk about the definition of trauma, something that really shatters your life, and that absolutely did for quite a while. I just remember sitting in the operations tent when the call came in, and the captain looked up and told everybody to get the F out. We all automatically knew something bad had happened. We were only supporting 2 forward operating bases. We knew what teams were out and what teams weren't. And so we knew who was out. We knew something really bad had happened. The news started to come in, and the captain called us, all the NCOs, back in and told us that Tim and Dan had been killed instantly. Liz was on her way to the green zone, to the field surgical hospital, or whatever it was called, by medevac, so we knew she was still alive. And we were pretty sure, because of how tough she was, there was no way she was not going to make it. Double negative on that, but we had full confidence that she was going to pull through. And a little while later, we were all sitting in our rec tent, and the med group commander had come over to try to give us all the information he could get and keep us as up to date as possible. But we weren't in there with a phone or anything, so he was just telling us everything he could get before he came over. And that was when our flight chief came in and opened the door. He was a pretty tough guy, but he was wearing his sunglasses when he came into that dark tent, and we knew why right away. That was when he told us that Liz didn't make it. So, losing people close to you in combat, it's definitely something that's going to leave some emotional scars too. And for me, for a while, what I tried to do, I guess, a lot of people try to do, is cover up the scars with alcohol and other dumb stuff and pretend everything was okay, when it really wasn't. It's taken until now, 14 and a half years later, I've been talking more and more openly about these memories with people, and it's definitely way better than not talking about it and pretending like everything's okay when it isn't. There's still times today, even just yesterday, in fact. I think about them every single day, but just yesterday there's a couple of specific memories. Some of them didn't really come back to me up until recent years, but this one in particular, I remember as soon as the notification came in and we all knew what had happened, we had to go out. Somebody, whoever was on standby, had to go out and do the post blast on our friends. And there was one team that was up, was another, at least 2 of the guys, I can't remember who their third person was, but 2 of the 3 at least were also all stationed together with the group of us that were there back at Hill. There was probably 10 or 15 of us on that deployment from Hill Air Force Base out in Utah, where Tim, Dan, and Liz had also all been assigned, as well as myself. And I can just remember seeing the team leader, distinctly the team leader, and the team member too, I'm pretty sure, immediately, without even hesitating, grabbing their rifles, grabbing their body armor, running over to the truck. But at the same time, while doing that, just sobbing uncontrollably, understandably, of course. Thankfully, thankfully, I don't know. No, you're not going to go on this call. We need to send another team, because of the proximity of our group, how close we all were. You think about it, everybody was close together, right? Everybody was pretty tight. But I guess, in that moment it kind of made a little bit more sense to send a team who hadn't been stationed with them out there instead. Which, somebody has to do it, unfortunately. What does this all mean? How does this all tie together to scars? Well, what Kyle says in his book about scars is, scars are proof that you survived it, and you're still here, and your body is healed, and there's a lot of power in that. Visible scars are something somebody else can see and maybe even find a way to relate, especially like a common type of surgery scar. They can find somebody else who also survived and encourage them to keep fighting and recover from whatever that surgery might have been. And I think, the hard part is you can't really see emotional scars too well, if at all. But by sharing our emotional scars, maybe something similar could take place. He says that over time the scars fade and they heal. Over time, some things, some memories, some emotional scars fade a little, but maybe not all the way, and maybe don't heal all the way. And some will still be more visible than others over the years, but that's okay, because again, it's proof that you're still here. Weeks, months, days, years, however long later. So, sharing that vulnerability with people is a good thing. It's disclosure for you, and it's a reminder for others that horrible things can happen, but we can recover from it. And I think about like a surgery scar. Sometimes an injury will heal on its own, like a cut or something like that. And other times you need help. You need to get a doctor to stitch you up. Like my wrist surgery. I had to get a whole bunch of plates and screws from breaking my wrist. That would have never healed without help from a doctor, and just like some emotional scars might never really heal, or maybe they'll heal even better with help from at least, some friends and people you trust, maybe a professional. So that's my thought on scars. Feel free to agree, disagree in the comments, or keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.